Shalom, Salama, Siemi, Shalom. Greetings, my Israelite brothers and sisters, whether you are of the bloodline or you are of the covering through our Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. I'm coming today with something that was brought up by a conversation that I had with Brother Christian. And so I want to first say that it's imperative that we have an understanding of who we are and kind of the doctrines that are floating on out there, because there's a lot of commentators that will say that we're the people of this land, we're this, we're that. And a lot of that stuff just is not true. So today, when I woke on up, I gave God the Most High the glory. And so as I turned on the news, tried to see what the weather is looking like, tried to see how the day was going to shape up, the Weather Channel was saying, giving the morning greetings of Happy Columbus Indigenous Day. And so for a lot of the folks, especially Black folks, quote unquote Black folks, because of how blinded we are as a people, we'll just say some off the wall doctrines and terminology. And, listen, and that's okay. Listen to me. That's okay. Because you want to know the funny thing. It doesn't really matter what they say. It's what the Most High is doing. And I before I dig deep into this, this was something that was kind of a culmination effort that was brought about. It started honestly last week with Brother Christian. He wanted to have an initiative, and he sent out an email to a lot of the folks that are out there in terms of some of the plans that he's trying to do. And I said, that's good that he is doing that. And I kind of gave him a little bit of things to consider, because I used to do a lot of the same things that he was trying to do in the military. And when you are working at, higher level commands, part of that is you're going to be an action officer. And that means that you'll have to, in some instances, go around getting people together, scheduling conferences, getting logistics worked on out for transportation, things of that nature. So I kind of gave him a couple things to kind of give him some ideas. And I believe that he'll have a lot more posted on HebrewSphere.com. So I'm not going to take his thunder or his idea, but I wanted to share that because as I had shared that idea, he came on back to me and he said, "Hey, I had a dream. I've had this dream for the last week." And he said, "Can I share this dream with you?" And here I am. I'm thinking, I was like, okay, I really don't like hearing dreams, because it's like, I listen, when it comes to me, I don't think of myself that highly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, you're coming to me about this dream, and I feel like Tommy from Martin. You ain't got no job, Tommy. We validate ourselves off of the world standards. And we don't really understand what the standard is that the Most High has on us. And that's a heart standard. And that's what I'm starting to get. That's what I'm starting to learn. Because just like many of you all that listen to this, I'm not perfect, and I never boast that I'm perfect. I always boast, listen, I am perfectly imperfect, because here's the thing: we all woke up in this captivity. Therefore, we woke up into seeing, into a revealing, into a rapture. Oh, there's a key word, rapture. And when you look at these words, because words have meaning, rapture just means to have a thought or a revelation that's so grand that it's life changing, it's altering. But we have to understand, we just didn't get these words given to us by our captors just because. We had these words given to us because there are things that are going on that's way above us. And as you can all tell, those things are happening right now as we speak. And it's not happening within our community. We're talking one way. We're talking, listen, this is our captivity. Our captivity is almost over, and the Most High is getting ready to collect us. And then you have society going crazy. Well, we have to vote, and we're gonna get things back to normal, and this and that. And so I kind of want to touch on a couple of those key aspects right now in this essay, because I believe that the Most High had put this on my heart because a lot of things were happening with me. And I know that it's not just me. A lot of things are happening within our community because we're all going through this test, this environment that's happening presently. So Brother Christian had spoken to me about his dream, and his dream was saying that he was doing something online for his classes, and he was noticing like a banner or something that come up for his class to have him, um, to an effect to withdraw or to stand by or to you know um, to not follow what was being followed or said. And so when he expressed that dream to me, it was funny because the night before we had spoken, and I was explaining some things, and we were kind of talking and chatting. And so yesterday when I spoke to him, when we were talking about this dream, um, I was that Sunday morning on the I-24, is the like Israeli 24 channel. It's kind of their US news outlet, like a France 24. It's Israeli 24. So they had the commentary that was on, and usually I don't stick around to see anything that's on those particular channels, just because I know who they are and I know the propaganda that they try to provide. But it was interesting because on that channel, it was talking about Hebrew Israelites, and it was talking about Damona. And, one of the popular spokesmen for that tribe there in Damona, The light skinned brother, I forgot what his name is, but I mean he's very familiar, especially if you've been awakened or an awakening for a while. You know the face. So he was given his aspect of, you know, how they came to be in Demona, where they believe that they're sitting on in Telerod, with how the scriptural references go. You know, why they believe that area is the land. You know, things of that nature. And look, I can't fault them because here's the thing: they were operating in what in the information, the material that they had back in the 1960s, and now we understand with all the stuff coming out from the internet. You know, this age of understanding, Daniel 12:4, that a lot of the information, because we don't have all the information, we didn't have all the pieces all at once. You're doing things according to what you know and not according to what the Most High reveals. And you have to understand, the Most High reveals things in certain segments and certain features. He's not going to give us the whole thing. Matter of fact, he won't give us the whole thing, especially in captivity. We're finishing up, and we finished up our 400 years of captivity. We're still in captivity. Do not get me wrong. We are still in our captivity. It wasn't just going to be, oh, we're here. Some of us have awakened, and now we're getting ready to go home. No, that's it's different. That wasn't going to be the case. And so, as Brother Christian had given me that dream, and he told me the dream, I told him, I said, you know what, Brother Christian, I said, I understand where you're coming from, because, you know, for a lot of folks, this is their midterms. For me, I just had to go through writing a paper for my first class on what I was working on and what I'm working on. So it was pretty stressful last week. I said, I definitely understand. I definitely feel what you're saying. But last week, there's a lot of things that was happening in the spiritual that was just being exposed, because we understand our captivity, our spiritual captors, those principalities, they're warring. And they're not warring with us, they're warring with the Most High, which makes them go crazy. You know, it's kind of like back in the day, you know, you would hear Young Jeezy. You had to go there, Young Jeezy. You know, they make the Doughboys go crazy. When they hear that new beat, they make the Doughboys go crazy. I think of it like this: when the white supremacists are hearing the cries from their spiritual principalities, their spiritual powers being collapsed and toppled, their statues, their idols being collapsed and toppled, it's making them go crazy. It's making them respond and react in a manner that's true to their nature. And that's actually Ezekiel 38, where those dragons, you know, or they go back, because that's the nature. That's Ezekiel 38. A lot of this stuff, it all aligns. And you know what? The Most High gives us concrete information after concrete information. He layers it on thick. Because, see, he had to give us the information the way that we can digest it, and not the way that they can digest it, which means not the way our captors digested it. Our captors, they look at the word and they see it for face value. They don't see the actual spiritual implications of this. So as I see all the people, talking about, the Jeff Durbin things and the vocab Malone, with all the other craziness. Well, yes, that's the topical. But we actually have to drill down just a little bit deeper and we have to find out the spiritual component to this. And so I don't want to say, I'm gonna be interpreting dreams. Give me your dream and I'll interpret it for you. Give me your um, situation or problem, and I'll be a fortune teller. No, because I don't delve into that. And honestly, I believe that, to be honest, when the Most High uses somebody, it's always in humility. Because trust me, I didn't want to be used. I wanted to go to my 9 to 5, work on honing my trade craft and whatever I was going to do, and do my thing, whatever that was. And when we say do our thing, that just means working for the world, working for ourselves. But when the Most High has you to do something, your comfort level, it goes to 0, because you are very uncomfortable, because you're now leaning on him and you're not leaning on the comforts of this world. Because as we see, the comforts of this world is getting ready to fall. And as we have noticed this in this past week, where even with a lot of the broadcasts from the new black media, the white supremacists have already declared what they're going to do on election day. And here's the thing, as the white supremacists have declared that, most black people are like, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. There's really no benefit for us. So do you understand? There's another spiritual component that's happening. Spiritually, as we have separated ourselves from this nation and the processes of this nation, they're now having to spiritually react in the natural, the way that they can react. Okay, well, we're going to have militia groups at this thing. We're going to have this at this thing. And then for a majority of black people, it's like, okay, I don't care what you have. I already knew that y'all weren't going to do anything for us. And you know what? Sometimes if you've been abused, guess what? You're just not going to take the abuse anymore. You're just going to say, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. Why? Because I'm tired of being abused. I'm tired of the aspect that something is going to change when I keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same result. Thinking things are going to change. That's the definition of insanity. I'm tired of being insane. And now you have folks that have awoken, and folks that are starting to see, some folks that are blind, some folks that are half blind, and some folks that can fully see. And so as I began to kind of think about Brother Christian's dream, the Holy Spirit had told me, the Ruach HaKodesh had told me, go and look at Enoch and think about what Enoch said about the sheep having the sword. And so we looked that on up, and so I read to him from Enoch 88 and 89. And so just to give you a little bit of context of Enoch. Enoch is in the Bible, and he is the son of Jared, and I think he's like eighth or ninth down from Adam. So, I mean, he's relatively close to, or excuse me, around sixth or seventh. So he's relatively close. He understands how to walk with the Most High. He understands how to live righteously, how to deal righteously, because it was passed down to him. Do you understand? That's in the Word. You only have the righteous that are recorded. When they're mentioned, they're recorded because they lived some sort of righteous and some sort of righteousness. Now they weren't perfect by any means, but they had just enough to where they understood who the Most High was and how to walk with Him. They served as their fathers had served, so they were able to incur that right, incur that name. So Enoch, son of Jared, and Enoch lived 60 and 5 years and begat Methuselah. So here's something crazy about Enoch. Methuselah was one of the oldest living men in scriptures at that time, because Methuselah had actually walked with the Most High. And see, when Methuselah walked with the Most High, he knew he was doing something right. And see, the Most High likes righteous people. He'll keep them. He'll keep them not for his benefit, but for the benefit of others. That's why when people say, listen, if you live unrighteously, guess what? God will get you on out of here. Because why? If you're not if not used as a purpose for the Most High, then guess what? You've already consigned your fate. You've already shown your fate. And the reason why that's important, because when you look at Enoch, you see that Enoch in the Bible, he's really not mentioned that much because, in Genesis is really just a cliff notes of what happens. If we look at that, it's just a cliff notes. It's not really anything that delves into a lot of stuff. It just gives you an overview. And that's why you had the other scriptures that's obviously taken on out to provide that context of what Genesis was saying. So Genesis is the outline, the Cliff Notes version of what was going on. And it says here in Genesis 5 and started at 21, and Enoch lived 60 and 5 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat more sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. It didn't say Enoch died. It said God took him. He said, look, Enoch, you're so righteous, you're not even going to taste death. And not only that, because your son, Methuselah, you've trained him. He's going to live a very long time. And he's going to live so much so that he's going to see Noah. Will be on the cusp of Noah. So think about that. Enoch, great grandfather of Noah. And Noah and his three sons really started off the story of humanity post flood. And so, why do we say that that's important? Well, because you understand how the nations and the people group, how they started to react and interact with one another. See, Enoch is special because Enoch actually is a prophetic word of literally what the Most High has shown him that was getting ready to happen. And it's still happening today. And the reason I say that it's still happening today is because Enoch was shown something very important. He was shown how the end was going to be for the struggles of man. And the struggles not just of man, but the struggles of the Most High's people, his chosen people. And see, when I was breaking the scripture down to Brother Christian, I asked Brother Christian, I said, how many times have you read Enoch? He was like, I just read it once. I really didn't think too much of it. I said, yeah, that's understandable. I mean, and for him, he hasn't been awakened that long, but he caught that fire post awakening. And see, the Most High was using him and his gifts at the appropriate time. Because you have to understand, there are a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of things that are happening in the order that they're supposed to happen. And I looked as we were reading out of Enoch chapter 89. In Enoch chapter 89, it actually talks about the Yeshua HaMashiach. And it shows the context of what Yeshua HaMashiach was living in. Because here's the thing, we have literally been in the same struggle. We're in that same iteration of struggle that he was in. And that struggle was, as Jerusalem had fallen and was starting to fall, the Most High had sent out a sheep, and that sheep had a horn. That horn was so special that all the earth looked at that horn. They tried to break the horn. What do you think is happening right now? When you try to break something, you try to what? You try to bend it to your will. And see, what the problem is is that we don't really understand the spiritual context of what's going on in Enoch chapters 88 and 89. See, the Bible uses animals as people groups. That's what the Bible uses. These folks over here, they're lions. These folks over here are tigers. These folks over here are hawks, are ravens. Ishmael, wild as a what? As a jackass. But then you see in Enoch, Ishmael was labeled as an ass, as a donkey, as a wild mule that couldn't be contained. It couldn't be stopped. Sort of like the same things that we're seeing right now. But it also showed, and this kind of took me aback. I can't make this up. This kind of took me aback. It showed that Esau's people group were pigs. That was chapter 88. I can't make that up. I can't make that up. And when I saw that, I said, wow. I know what the allegories and things of that nature are to what is being said and things and how that's being said. But you have to understand in this biblical or extra biblical context, what a pig does is that the pig devours everything. You put it in front of your face, they devour things. And so Esau was a pig. He was a devourer. What do they call men that are sexual deviants or that prowl on the nature of their lust, right? Pigs. Devourers of what? Of flesh. Devourers of sexual immorality. And now you kind of understand who runs the game of the porn industry. And I'll leave it like that. So prophetically, see, we understand we have a different set of eyes as quote unquote black people because we understand analogy. Even though we kind of say it, we actually are saying what the Most High has actually said. We just don't say it in the right context. Because here's the funny thing, the Most High actually does put these on our minds. He actually does show us, yeah, you all are getting devoured. Because here's the thing, we all are sheep. When I grew up, mainly a lot of black folks we're very meek. We're very humble. And as I've said in previous video essays, that humbleness causes and has caused our detriment. Because when we're humble to such a degree, that becomes our destruction. And when we become too insatiated with what the wolves have tried to feed us, we become really deaf, blind, and dumb. And let me tell you, this is why the quote unquote Christian church or the Roman church, they don't like to look at the book of Enoch because it tells on them. That in Enoch 89 and 6, and I looked, while the sheep were eaten up by the dogs, by the eagles, and by the kites, they neither left them their body, nor their skin, nor their muscles, until their bones alone remained. Oh, isn't that prophetic? But then we see in Ezekiel chapter 37, Valley of the Dry Bones. Until their bones fell upon the ground and the sheep became diminished. Let me explain this to you. Diminished, not destroyed. It's just that we were out of our right minds. We were no longer thinking clearly. We were no longer understanding what was happening. I observed likewise during the time that 23 shepherds were overlooked, that 23 shepherds were overlooking who completed in their respective periods 58 periods. See, the shepherds are the rulers of this age. And that started from the time of Babylon, because we're in the time of Babylon. It's just we had 70 shepherds during this whole time of Babylon. That's why when we look at Trump, we understand, okay, Trump is the last pharaoh. Technically, he's the last shepherd. And the reason is because the book of Enoch actually says so. Then were the small lambs born of those white sheep who began to open their eyes and to see, crying out to the sheep. So who did we have here again? We had some more of the prophets. And I saw, no, so this is chapter 89 and 9. The sheep, however, cried not out to them, neither did they hear what they uttered to them, but were deaf, blind, and obdurate in the greatest degree. And so let's break this on down. Let's make sure we know the context of what was trying to be transliterated. And it says obdurate from Oxford Languages. Stubbornly refusing to change one's point, one's opinion, or course of action. What do we see going on right now? We've awakened. Now, we have awakened, but guess what? The people point of views or actions, they're stubborn. These are blind. And let me show you in Enoch what the Most High does. Because this really changes the theology and the perception of theology of, well, I'm saved through Christ. Are you really? Well, let's take a look. I saw in the vision that ravens flew down upon those lambs, that they seized one of them. So this is what you had seen with Christ on the scene. And so during that time, there were a lot of people prophesying, look, Isaiah 53 is getting ready to come to hand. Look, the Messiah is going to be here. The Messiah is coming. And when they saw the Messiah, they didn't even care. They're already deaf, blind, and just didn't really care. So they're telling them this is a way to eternal life, but let me show you what happened. That they seized one of them, and that tearing the sheep in pieces, they've devoured them. I also saw that horns grew upon those lambs, and that the ravens lighted down upon their horns. The ravens were trying to look at the rams Who are the rams? That's us. That was the believers. Okay. So I'm with Pastor Kelly. That covenant never was destroyed. It just was, we had to revamp it to really provide for what the Most High was getting ready to do. So, as everything was starting to culminate in that period, that was the period of the Romans and the Greeks, or excuse me, the Greeks and then the Romans, right after Babylon. Because they went on in there and they started destroying everything because they thought that they could please the Most High. But the Most High said, no, I don't want any of that. That bread, it's moldy, it's stale. That's not fitting for me. I don't like it. So then, verse 12, I saw also that horns grew upon those lands, and that the ravens lighted down upon their horns. I saw too that a large horn sprouted out on an animal, one among the sheep, that their eyes were opened. This is, I believe, is what they're talking about Christ. He looked at them, their eyes wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Debella saw him, all of whom ran to him. So, again, this is just my opinion. This is where you have John the Baptist preparing for Christ as Christ was the Bella. He looked at them, their eyes wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Debella saw him, all of whom ran to him. And besides this, all the eagles, the avis, the ravens, and the kites were still carrying off the sheep, flying down upon them and devouring them. Do you understand? This is now the beginning of the woes. Because what were they doing? They're enslaving Judah and Israel. The sheep were silent, but the Debella lamented and cried out. Then the ravens contended and struggled with them. You know, it was actually, it wasn't really the Roman eagle. It was actually the raven. That's actually a historical reference. Look at that. That was actually the historical reference point of Europe. And that was the people group that had formed about. You know, when you see like the Roman standards and things of that nature, you'll have the legions and all this other stuff. Well, that's what you had in that time frame. So as Christ, as Yeshua HaMashiach had begun to cry out and had spoken, the ravens were trying their best to try to prevent what he was saying. So it says in 89:17, then the ravens contended and struggled with them. They wished among them to break his horn. That's through Christ and that's through his spirit. But they prevailed not over him. I looked on them until the shepherds, the eagles, the avis, and the kites came, who cried out to the ravens to break the horn of the Debella, to contend with him and to kill him. But he struggled with him and cried out that help might come to him. That was Christ on the cross. Then I perceived that the man came who had written down the names of the shepherds and who ascended up before the Lord of the sheep. He brought assistance and caused everyone to see him descending to the help of the Debella. So, what do we always say? The Spirit of Christ, what lives in us. correct? The Spirit of Christ lives in us. Now, how long were they trying to kill off this message? They were trying to kill this thing off forever. Actually, at least 2,000 years. But what we started to understand was, although they couldn't kill off the message, everything prophetically is starting to line up. When we start to look, the spirit of a man, the spirit of a man. Look, you have the spirit of Pharaoh. You have the spirit of Nebuchadnezzar. In this land, you have the spirit of Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar and Sodom. All three residing at the same time. So, as we look, then I perceived the man came who had written down the names of the shepherds and who ascended up before the Lord of the sheep. He brought assistance and caused everyone to see him descending to the help of the Dibella. I perceived likewise that the Lord of the sheep came to them in wrath, while all those who saw him fled away. All fell down in the tabernacle before his face, while all the eagles, the avis, ravens, and kites assembled and brought with them all the sheep of the field. All came together and strove to break the horn of the Dibella. Then I saw that the man who wrote the book at the word of the Lord opened the book of destruction, of that destruction which the last 12 shepherds wrought, and pointed out before the Lord of the sheep that they destroyed more than those who preceded them. I also saw that the Lord of the sheep came to them, and taking in his hand the scepter of his wrath, seized the earth, which became rent asunder. And rent simply means torn asunder. While all the beasts and birds of the field fell from the sheep, or birds of heaven fell from the sheep and sunk into the earth, which closed over them. And this is chapter 89, 27. I saw too that a large sword was given to the sheep, who went forth against all the beasts of the field to slay them. But all the beasts and the birds of heaven fled away before their face. And I saw a throne erected in a delectable land. And it said, upon this sat the Lord of the sheep, who received all the sealed books. And that's 89 and 30. And I'll stop right there. But when you look at that and you understand that, and you see a lot of our folks that are here in captivity, they're saying, well, this is the promised land. This is the people. Well, not according to Enoch. We were carried away. We were carried away. And, it's funny because I saw a Patreon article by Teo. And, a lot of those articles, I see that. I said, okay. I said, the Most High is going to tell me. He's going to show me what that means and how that's going to impact things. And sure enough, as I was speaking with Brother Christian, that was the understanding that the Most High had given me. See, we strive to look at all these historical books. We try to understand from the face value of all the things that's happening, and that's not wrong. But you got to understand, there's a lot of spiritual layers that have to be peeled back. So think about this. As I saw that article from Teo on his Patreon about Ethiopia, Israel was trying to get Ethiopia to send 2,000 Jews. Think about what's happening, what those birds are trying to do, because that's Europe. They're trying to have us as a spiritual body shield because they know that the Most High is getting ready to come down to his people to extract destruction. I didn't make that up. That's what the word says. That's what Enoch says. But you have to understand, the closer that we get to something, the more that we have more spiritual clarity in our understanding. Because here's the thing, who can challenge it? You realize right now the pastors can't challenge any of this. And so they say, well, I'm going to have inflammatory statements to try to deride what's being said. Because I got to keep my congregation, I got to keep my congregants. There was a story that said, I believe the number is very staggering. About $400 billion had been collected from the black church since the 1980s. $400 billion. That's just the black church. Imagine all that money that had been wasted on doctrines of men. Because right now, when you explain to them, okay, what is that doctrine of men gonna provide? What is that doctrine of men? What was that going to show? Because see, here's the thing. They understand that the real and present danger is not with black folks. They understand that this real and present danger has always been with our captors. And now that our captors are starting to fight amongst themselves, see, everything is fine and dandy with the prosperity message until that first shot is fired. Oh, and this is going to be much, much deadlier and much worse than the Civil War. And they're already telling you when the thing's going to start. They're not being original. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. They're fighting. They gave you that 6-month buildup. If you hadn't noticed that with the whole George Floyd thing, it was literally a 6-month buildup. All right, everybody start building up. Everybody start getting your armory together. Start getting your ammo together. Start getting your swords ready. And see, all we've been declaring is, look, the Most High is going to visit his people and he's going to bring us on out of here. Why are you declaring that? Because this is what his word says. And Enoch is congruent with all the other books that are there. See, Enoch got the high level view. He was able to get the literal prospectus. He was able to get the charter for all my business minded people. He saw the portfolio in the grand project management plan that the Most High had, or what he was doing. He said, okay, come on, Enoch. I'm going to bring you on up here. You can see this for yourself. Well, you're right here with me. Because he said, look, that's Genesis chapter 5. And God took him. Come on, you're going to take a look. You're going to see this whole thing play on out. And now you have to understand, as we're seeing everything play on out, we're understanding there's a little bit more to this captivity than meets the eye. These folks are trying to create a way to be able to survive after the Most High comes down and visits us face to face. And see, this time we're not going to be like our ancestors that were in the wilderness in Egypt. Because if you read on in Enoch 89, the rest of that chapter, if you're going to be blind and you want to continue to be blind, then you're going to get thrown into a pit of fire. You know, it's interesting that this isn't before the Most High comes down. If you read that and you understand the context, it's not before everybody's made right and made perfect. Not only are we visited, but we're refined. We are continuing to be refined. And this wasn't just the destruction of chosen sheep. This was now after you had been set back into your land. Now you're continuing to be refined because the Most High doesn't like ugly. He's not going to accept, well, you know, I believe it's comedic. I believe it's this. I believe it's that. I believe it's Ogun. I believe, well, I believe America was our land, but you know, it's that, and we should be going back to America. All those false doctrines, all those things are going to quickly wane because here's the problem. A lot of folks are going to say, no, this is how the word was shown. This is how the word was demonstrated. And now here we are. So it's real simple for us. We're just going to throw you into that fire because we're never going back to that type of slaughter. We're never going back to that type of being devoured, of being mercilessly ruled and killed off. Now we're going to follow the doctrine of spirit and truth. Because see, we see now, and we're not going to take any blind sheep. We're not going to take any sheep that have a spiritual defection. See, this is where we're at. We're in a time of pre-refinement. That's why I really wanted to come on out with this as, you know, this is where I'm going to try to talk about peace and being and having peace in the middle of the storm. Well, we're in the middle of the storm. If you haven't already gone into your places to pray, into your closets to pray, and to being able to understand what the Most High is saying, to meditate on His Word. As for you, my person that had sent me the message on HebrewSphere.com, I won't mention your name. But that's how we continue to meditate on his word day and night. We don't meditate with burning incense or, saying chants and Romans and all sorts of things that we see the Gentile, the heathen do. But a meditating is, listen, I'm going to keep to whatever I do, whatever business I conduct, I'm going to have it done in an applicable manner of what the Most High does. Because here's the thing, I'm going to operate in spirit and truth. Look, I'm not a big one for keeping the laws. I tell you that. Oh, you're not a law keeper. You're not a law keeper. Well, here's the thing. Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. Yeshua HaMashiach is Lord of the Sabbath. So our rest is continuously through him. He's our Sabbath rest. You could designate a day. You could designate a time. That's fine. You do that for the nation, that's fine. Hey, listen, everybody's on rest on this day because guess what? The Most High isn't an author of confusion. Certain folks are going to rest. Certain folks are going to be on standing by. But you have to understand that rest, that's healthy. And we also need to strive to do everything that we can do to keep up with healthy practices. See, everything that we do and that the Most High gave was to provide life. Not to be mad at your brother, not to be mad at your neighbor, not to be mad at your family, not to indulge in all sorts of sexual impropriety, not to do all these things that we've seen from the heathen. Because we're supposed to do better, because we're supposed to instruct them. They tried to instruct themselves literally since 70 AD. They tried to instruct themselves. And now you have the Pope wanting to change the 10 Commandments. Well, let's see how well that really did. You can't be Pharaoh trying to administer something that the Most High didn't have for you. You can't be Pharaoh trying to act like a wolf when it's for the sheep. Here's the thing, my sheep know my voice. You can still be redeemed and baptized under the sheep. What do they say for Passover? What do? You take the blood of a lamb, right? You put it over your doorpost. Because why? That signifies you're a sheep. How many of the actual Egyptians did that? Think about this. How many of those Egyptians actually said, you know what, let me do this. Let me do that. Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy. How many of those mixed households? Okay, well, you want to know what? Look, we're just going to listen to what they're going to say because they're sheep, and let's just go ahead. Because the word also does say that the stranger went with them. And if you read Enoch 88, they all became sheep. There was no distinction because my sheep hear my voice. See, you have to understand in this day and age, it wasn't about being just a sheep following Christ. Let me explain this thing to a lot of these folks very clearly and very carefully. It wasn't just about sheep following Christ. Because here's the problem that was happening. You still have a lot of wolves that drape over the sheepskin, but in their hearts, they are still wolves. Let me say this again. You still had a lot of wolves that were in the sheepskin, but in their hearts, they were still wolves. So think about these white supremacists. Think about these KKK folks. Think about these Christian far right extremist groups and things of that nature. But when you look at that, they're just wolves. Well, no, I'm not a wolf. I just gave myself another title. I'm a quote unquote Christian. And you see right there in the word, that right there in Enoch, they're trying their best to overcome the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of the Most High. Here's the thing, we carried that. We understood it, we knew it. Now we understand. Wow. Not only did we know it, we already knew who Christ was. We just called him Yeshua HaMashiach or some other Bantu derivative. We knew of him. That's why we were scared. That's why we were petrified. That's why we were blinded. And that's why we were carried away and carried off. We understood who he was. We understood the curses that was getting ready to follow. Because why? Because he cursed us from the cross. And now in this time, we are literally at our final moments. We are literally at our final moments. Because the Most High, he is a spirit of truth and he reveals all truth. I don't like to use the word, well, I'm a prophet and I do that. No, I'm giving you something prophetic. Because here's the thing, we are a nation of prophets. You want to know why? Because I believe that this is the house of David. I believe that America, we're the house of David. And I'm not talking about this crazy David Koresh stuff. No, because here's the funny thing. We have historical books even showing it. We came through, we multiplied, we were in Africa. Then they snatched us on up. They knew who we were. Yeah, we done killed one of our cousins in them. Yeah. Cousin Yeye was on that stuff. And we put him on that cross. And as soon as we put him on that cross, it was not even 40 years later. Everything he done said, everything he done told us. Imagine that. That's something that stays in your DNA. No, believe me, they now have the studies. They now have the studies. This stuff stays in your DNA. And now, here's the funny thing is that now we're starting to be emboldened. And we're not going to be emboldened to have the sword here in this land. But what they're going to do, they're bringing us back. Here you go. And then they're going to try and run away. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. We'll do whatever you want. Just leave us alone. We know who you are. Leave us alone. But we have to understand, as all this revelation knowledge is revealed, as revelatory knowledge is coming through, it's amazing that their folks can't understand it. Because it said so. in Enoch chapter 88. Their shepherds couldn't understand it. Their shepherds didn't know what was going on. Their shepherds didn't have a perception, because you want to know why? Because the Lord the sheep, Father Yahuwah, he wasn't telling them anything. He didn't care about them. Oh, let me mess with some eschatology right now. He wasn't caring about those other nations. Because you want to know why? Those other nations, if they were still quote unquote sheep, or excuse me, wolves and kites and avis and ravens and eagles trying to put on sheep's clothing, he didn't care. Look, we're seeing, and it's being demonstrated. You can call yourself whatever you want, but if you have the heart of those animals and not the heart of a sheep, you're doomed for destruction. That's not me saying it. That's what the word says. And then you have other scriptures congruent to what Enoch was saying that we're living in right now. That's why these folks want to try to escape and go to the moon and Mars and all this other craziness, because they know that this destruction is going to be on their heads sooner than later. It's too late for them. They can't run anywhere. See, when we started to figure it on out, they started to figure it on out. And they were figuring it out. It's not going to end well for them. See, they were so concerned of, well, we got to figure out if there's going to be another civil rights person or another thing or another that. They were so concerned about that, they weren't even reading the scriptures. They weren't even doing something simple, like asking the Most High, hey, what is actually the truth? What is actually going on? One or two of them did it, but not the whole community. Because you want to know why? Their hearts were hearts of wolves. I'll go to church on Sunday and I'll lynch you on Monday. They're just putting on the sheep's clothing. Oh, I'm so humble. I'm so humility, and I'll give to the poor and the needy. But my heart is a wolf. I'm not saying that this is for all the wolves. I'm just saying this is where your heart is at. You can still be a sheep under Yeshua HaMashiach, under the understanding of who we are as a people. Because here's the thing, I firmly believe you can't have salvation one way or another without that firm understanding. And we're seeing that in the Christian church. Yeah, I'll accept Christ, but I still hate black people. What? What? Those are those sheep that are deaf, blind, and dumb, that are obdurate, that don't want to have that understanding, that are vehemently refusing. And here's the thing, were they gonna be able to do that refusing forever? No. It was always a time frame that thing was gonna end. And so, the funny thing is, we had been saying this, ministries like Teo, Dante Fortson, Kingdom Harbor Ministries, Pastor Kelly with We Woke Now, Robert Callahan, Ashonda at Large, Carrie Ann Giddens, and even to an extent, Brother Jonathan Shalombo and those folks there in the Congo, even though that they have some different and really questionable doctrine of the African spirituality, they know what time it is. There are folks that are going to get it right, and there are folks that aren't going to get it right. See, a lot of the folks that are speaking on out, they're either blind or partially blind when they're speaking out with these different doctrines. We have commentators on YouTube that just do regular mainstream commentation, and they'll say some things that you understand are blind. That doesn't mean they're not going to be saved out of this dispensation. They are, because you want to know why? The word says it. It's not going to be us that's going to be, oh, here we go. Time for us to get up on out of here because the horn blew and the spiritual horn blew, and now ready, set, go. No, because we already know that Isaiah 60 says what the Gentiles are going to do. Oh, here they come. We got to get them on out. We got to move them on out. See, I've already said this. World War III isn't going to be a war that you would expect. The way that the Gentiles are going to frame it is, it's the biggest rescue mission in human history. Again, let me tell you, the way that the Gentiles will frame it, this is the biggest rescue mission in human history. Why? Because first they got to get their people. Then they're going to say, "Oh, well, we got to get these folks that have to go." And let me tell you, the folks, the wolves here, guess what they're going to say? Take them. Why? Because we don't have to pay a debt. We don't have to worry about reparations. Get them off our hands. They're going to be happy about that because they're already building the narrative. Get on up, get on out of here. Wait, we're just coming for black people only. If you're a white person, we don't recommend you going. We recommend you staying here in America so we can build this thing to be a great nation. What do you think that this is going to? The warning signs are there. But we have to understand this is where our captivity is leading to. And we're seeing the end right in front of our faces. I would just challenge and argue with you whether you are a sheep under the blood or grafted in, or excuse me, or under, grafted in, excuse me. If you're a sheep that's under that blood, you know the voice of the Most High. That's why you listen to these channels. That's why you're coming on over here. You may say, oh, this sounds like black supremacy. Well, what do you think is going on in the world of white supremacy? We're just coming with words. They're coming with ammo. And remember, what does that always say? If you can't talk it out, there's a problem if you can't talk it out. Anything is solved with what? With the conversation. And then you have to understand, you are having your words used against you. You condemned yourselves. We didn't do it. We're just pointing it on out. Because here's the thing, the sheep are waking up. The sheep are waking up. And not only have we woken up, it's just, are we going to wake up blind? Or are we going to wake up with the ability to see? So, in conclusion, if you like the content provided from Covenant Awakenings, please like, share, and subscribe. Visit us at covenantawakenings.com. And I also have my Patreon and CashApp that are provided in the link below. For those descriptions, excuse me. So I definitely want to say thank you for those that are providing and are contributing the donations. They definitely help. But I would say, don't just provide in the substance, provide in the prayers. Because prayer does change things. It's reaching the heavens. Let me tell you, the Most High is coming down off his throne. He's actually, you know what I see spiritually? I see in the kingdom, I see the Most High, he stood up. He was stretching on out. He was stretching. And then he was telling his folks, okay, all right, tell the angels to get my armor. And he's girding up all of his loins. He's getting up. He's getting everything together. He's getting on his spiritual flak jacket. He's getting on his spiritual knee pads and shin guards. And he's saying, okay, time for me to come to my people. Because if you've noticed that, you got to remember the wolves, they're not understanding what's happening. So they're going crazy amongst themselves. Don't believe me? Take a look at the news. You always have something going crazy. You have something going on because they can't understand what's happening. The Most High has sent confusion in the camp of the enemy. And they're killing off themselves because they don't know how to deal with white supremacy or trying to hold on to this system of white supremacy. I'm not saying that every white person is a white supremacist. No, we don't say that. Because there are white folks that are sheep. They're sheep. Just like you actually had Egyptians that were sheep. They came into the fold. They saw, okay, it's time to go on. Because what? Guess what? They heeded the voice of the Most High. Well, they're leaving. Time for me to leave too. They heeded the voice of the Most High. The word says it. So if the hang up is this is coming from a black person, then you know what? That's between you and the Most High. But here's the thing. I love you all if you love me. If you truly love me, I'm going to truly love you. Because here's the thing. Love actually does have conditions. See, Paul was actually correct, even though they misconstrued it, if you read 1 Corinthians. Look, if you love me, there's a genuine love. Then love is patient. Love is kindness. If you don't love me, then what did Paul say? Hey, stay away from them. Give them to the power of Satan. Stay away from them. Until they come back and they realize what's going on. We've been conditioned to love a bad behavior. And now we're starting to understand that was totally wrong. You can't love somebody to the point of death. We see that in all these Lifetime movies that they love to promulgate. We see that in all the crime TV and all the investigative channel things that they love to put in our faces. But when it's a practical thing that we're explaining and we're giving biblical references, oh no, well, that's not how Christ sees it. And, they're real quick to try to defend like that. And it's like, no, that's called witchcraft. And see, you only had that power because the Most High gave it to you. You only had a season. This is why they get mad. Oh man, y'all are talking back. Wait a second, how come our witchcraft isn't working? Because you only had a season. We've awoken. Some of us to blindness, and some of us being partially blind, and some of us being able to see. We're not going to be a perfect fold. But when we're on out of here, that's when perfection is going to start really coming. So all I can say is woe to those that continue to want to do evil, even when the Most High comes down and gathers his sheep. Woe to those that want to continue to be blind. So with that said, family, shalom, siemi, shalom, peace and blessings, Israel.